Hey guys, TheAirsofttech here and welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a look at another LCT gun, this time the LCT SR-3M. Now this gun is like any other LCT gun. It's very well built, very well manufactured, very well put together. All the words you can use to describe that process, it does very well because it's an LCT gun. However, it does have a few small things about it that make it rather irritating to tech on, which we can get to later on in the video. Now let's swing the camera around, get a good look at the gun, and I'll talk about everything I did to it from the front to the back. So like I said, the LCT SR-3M is a really well-built gun externally and very well built internally as well. Like I said, I have a couple issues with the way these very high quality AEGs are sometimes put together and sometimes designed to fit together. And then I also have some issues on some other fronts, but regardless, the gun looks beautiful. The manufacturing on the receiver is excellent. Just the stock is excellent. All the plastic is of high quality. The charging handle is nice, and the dust cover up here is also very nice, or the upper receiver, whatever you want to call it. All that being said, it's a really good looking gun externally, and I did absolutely nothing to the externals. As you can see here, it is completely stock, externally speaking. Now, as you guys know, all my work tends to come internally, so we'll turn our focus to what I did to the gearbox and the hop-up chamber. So we will start with the hop-up chamber and barrel. Now the barrel I did leave stock. It's the LCT 6.08mm brass barrel. I looked at the bore quality. I kind of looked at it very closely, and it looked really good, honestly. I did run some polish through it, did run a lot of cleaning supply through it so that it cleans it out. It's nice and clean, sharp, polished, etc. It should perform very well. And then the hop-up chamber, I also left the physical hop-up chamber stock, and then I ended up throwing in a Lonex 70-degree bucking with a R-hop patch. All these things combined should give it stellar accuracy with a .28. Optimally, you should use .32s, as it'll just allow that BB to soar and be right on target every time. The R-hop patch was just cut from my own doing. It fits very well. It's very secure. I don't glue my R-hop patches down or use any sort of adhesive to adhese them to the barrel. But all that being said, it fits very appropriately. It should not come out of place, and they really never do. So let's move on to the gearbox. All right, so moving on to the gearbox itself. LCT does make some very high quality physical gearbox shells. This one's a version 3. Version 3s are notoriously nearly indestructible and almost never break down except under or at least the physical gearbox shell itself never breaks except under extreme pressures and tends to be user error. This gearbox shell is a quick change spring guide system, so that's just super cool. Unfortunately, you can't change the spring out without removing the gearbox, which is quite a pain. But this is shooting the appropriate FPS for what I'm building it for, so it shouldn't be any problem. There should be no need anytime soon to quick change this spring system. The compression system is completely stock. I did end up leaving the LCT 3/4 cylinder along with the LCT steel rack piston, as well as the aluminum piston head that comes with the LCT gun. The air nozzle is quite nice. The tappet plate is also quite nice, so all those things are stock, and so is the cylinder head. The spring is a Garter SP110, so an M120 or so equivalent. It's shooting approximately 370 FPS, which is exactly where I want this gun shooting, because I want it as close to 400 as possible, but I know there are some differences between chronos, and so I'm leaving some room for discretion. Moving down the gearbox some more, we do have a SiegeTech 10:1 ratio full stroke sector gear setup. These gears are phenomenal. They're the best you can absolutely buy. They're never going to break, and I would be absolutely stunned if they ever did. In addition, I do have some SHS 9mm steel bushings. Now, the reason I ended up replacing the legendary LCT 9mm bearings for some SHS 9mm steel bushings is simply because the SiegeTech gears would not fit appropriately on the LCT bearings, and also the LCT gears would barely fit appropriately on the LCT bearings. So, that being said, I ended up just swapping the bearings for the bushings. They'll work forever, they'll never break, so it shouldn't be a problem there at all. I like bearings, but when bearings are a problem, I tend to replace them, because when they are not, when they are a problem and you try to use them, they tend to cause a lot more problems than what they're worth. So that's what I did there, and what we have over here is a V3 gate Aster setup. It is the basic setup, so it doesn't have all the fancy features that many of the other gate products do have, but it can be unlocked if you so desire. We can enable pre-cocking, active braking, all sorts of things like that. And then here for the motor setup, we do have one of my own built 32 TPA, Franken-torque motors. This is an extremely high torque motor, which offers an extreme efficiency advantage, as well as having a significantly fast startup time, so that it gets a very good trigger response on those extraordinarily low ratio 10-to-1 gears inside the gun currently. So that's what I did to the internals. Now, this build was not hiccup free, however. There were a couple things that I ran into that required me to find solutions for, so we'll talk about that now. First, we'll talk about the issues that I had with the gate Aster. Now, to start off with, this gate Aster V3 fits perfectly in this gearbox, functions exactly the way I want it to, for the most part. However, this gun, the LCT SR-3M, does have a slightly different fire selection method than other guns tend to, or at least other version 3s tend to. The gate Aster is set up for AK, G36, and AUG accommodations on the selector switch. This is, not really an AK kind of setup. This is closer to a G3 kind of setup. However, the problem here is that this gun in safety, this selection in safety, only allows for a physical safety. Now, the other selector switch is down here. This controls semi-auto and full auto. The problem that I ran into with this is that while this gun might be in safety here, this selector is by default resting in semi-auto, meaning that you can never technically be in a safety mode per the gate Aster. There's just a physical barrier there. So this left me with a problem. I could not get the gate Aster to recognize what I was doing, no matter what type of situation, or no matter what type of programming mode I used, whether it was G36, AUG, AK. I could not get the gate Aster to recognize safe, semi, and full auto, really because the gate Aster was just seeing safe and semi as the same position, so there was no difference at all. And that is a significant problem. And I found just no way around it. So that is the unfortunate reality with this kind of gun. I had somebody send me a 3D printed selector plate, an STL file that I printed myself to see if I could get to work. And even then, I honestly just couldn't get it to work. So this is something that we can revisit later and fix it later if it's something, if there's a solution that arises. But to my knowledge and to all my research, I cannot figure out how to get this to work. So all that being said, this gun really only functions in semi-auto only. Now, there is a simple thing you can do. You can easily program it into AUG mode, and that works fantastic, where half a trigger pull is semi-auto, a full trigger pull is full auto. And then you can adjust your semi-auto and full auto parameters to allow for a significant difference in semi-auto and full auto trigger pulls, so there is no confusion. However, that is completely up to the user. That is on them. That is not something that I want to set and program here for myself, so that is something that I will pass along. Another issue that I ran into was that the way the outer barrel is stabilized into the receiver is that it uses just two of these tiny grub screws to apply pressure to the outer barrel so that it holds it the position that you set it in. Now, the problem with this is that if I loosen these screws, this barrel freely rotates up, to the right, to the left. There is no area that it physically has to sit in because it can just freely rotate. There's no lines that help guide it. There's nothing like that at all. There's no dot that you kind of bump it into and then that's where the middle technically is. There's nothing. You set where the middle is with the outer barrel and the receiver together. This leads to a lot of problems because what ends up happening with this is that if you have it ever so slightly to the right, then the BBs are going to hook to the right. If you have it ever so slightly to the left, your BBs are going to hook to the left. And so you have to get the barrel perfectly aligned where you want it in the receiver to allow your BBs to shoot perfectly straight. It doesn't matter how good your hop-up system is. If this is crooked one way or the other by any amount, then your BB is going to have a right or a left hook, respective to which way the outer barrel is facing. So the way I fix this is just simply trial and error. I would loosen those grub screws, I would rotate the barrel, I'm talking millimeters of rotation, maybe even less, and then secure the barrel and then test fire. And then I would do that over and over again until it got a perfect straight shot. that is extraordinarily tedious. It is, I would say, almost barely worth the effort, but you have to get the gun to shoot straight. So that being said, it had to be done. I got it done. I just wouldn't do it ever again. So there you have it, a very simple build overview of my work on this LCT SR-3M. All this being said, this gun does get a pretty good dose of joule creep. Even with stock compression setup, stock cylinders, cylinder heads, air nozzles, etc., barrel length, really, you can still have a good joule creep effect because not all manufacturers perfectly match their barrel length with their cylinder volume. In addition to this, the piston is a little bit weighted, like I tend to do. I tend to correct angle of engagement between the piston and the piston head with little nylon washers, as opposed to between the cylinder head and the piston head, which, you know, you lose volume technically either way, but the idea is that the piston weight maintains that energy output effect that the volume loss has. So all this being said, bunch of words, but all this being said is that it would be better to use heavier BBs than lighter BBs in this gun, both for accuracy and to maintain your joule output at a distance. Alright guys, that is all the time I have for this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and comment down below. I want to hear what you guys want to see in terms of Airsofttech videos. I'll be honest, it's kind of hard to maintain a decent output of videos simply because I really don't know what to make them about all the time. So if I can hear something from you guys about specifically what you want me to make videos on, that would be excellent. That would be extremely helpful, and then I can make more videos that way. But again, thank you very much for watching. I will see you guys on the next video of whatever the heck I'm doing next. But until then, stay tuned, techs.